Hello and Namaste. Welcome to the online workshop on Divine Breath. Let us start from the first chapter. Can you do me a big favor? Just take a deep breath in, then take it out. So what we did here is called breathing, and we all know it, right? What is this most important part of our living existence? Breathing is just an action of taking the breath in and taking the breath out. We keep doing this in and out, and it helps us stay alive. Important, right? Let us understand it further. What happens when you breathe? Breathing is consisted of a certain organs in our body. We know them very well. Primarily it's the lungs. We have a nose which takes in the breath. It goes through the trachea, goes to the bronchi, forms two parts, gets into the two lungs. In the lungs, what happens is basically what your lungs are basically sacs of air. When they go, the bronchioles go into the lungs, they separate out in a tree-like branch. In that manner, it ends in something called an alveoli. Now what happens here is very interesting. Once it reaches the alveoli, there is a wall of the alveoli. The blood that comes from the heart goes to the alveoli, the lining of the alveoli. Here an exchange takes place. An exchange of oxygen going into the blood and the carbon dioxide coming out of the lung. Once that exchange happens, the blood, the pure blood, meaning the one which has oxygen, the oxygenated blood, goes to the heart pumps it and it goes to your body. What happens to the blood that came into the lining of the alveoli? The carbon dioxide from that is taken into the lungs, and when you breathe out, that carbon dioxide is released out in the air. So breathing is primarily just taking in of the oxygen and taking out of the carbon dioxide. When you take in the oxygen, your body, it is taken in the blood and then it is taken into the tissues, into the muscles, and it is being used. What comes out is carbon dioxide, because when they get tired, when your muscles get tired, the organs get tired, they release carbon dioxide, which the body does not use. Now that goes into the lungs and it is released outside. If that is not done, what happens is there is a build-up of carbon dioxide in your body, in the tissues, in the muscles, and every place. It brings down your energy. When that energy goes down, within seconds, this is very fast. Your breathing is one of the fastest system in your body. When the carbon dioxide build-up happens, within seconds and minutes, you could die. And that is the reason we breathe in and breathe out continuously. It's an autonomous function, which means we cannot control whether I will breathe in or whether I do not want to breathe right now. Right? I can control my eating. I say, okay, I'll be fasting today, I will not be eating. But in breathing, you cannot say that I will not be breathing today, I'm taking a day off. It just keeps happening. So this part is very, very important. Now let us see what organs are involved. I told you about the lungs, the nose, the trachea. There is another very important organ. It's a muscle. It's called your diaphragm. Now this is somewhere here under your ribs. There is a muscle like this and the lungs are on top of it. When you breathe in, this diaphragm flattens and it allows the lungs to take the air in, it allows the lungs to expand. Apart from that, your lung is surrounded by ribs. The rib cage, the bones that we have here, the rib cage. Now that rib cage protects the lungs from the front to the back, meaning it is connected in the front to an organ, to a bone called sternum, and to the back it is connected to your spine. Then between those two ribs, there are these tiny muscles. These tiny muscles, they expand and they contract. What happens now is this is my rib cage, and once I breathe in, it expands and it contracts. It expands and it contracts. Same with the diaphragm, it flattens and it rises. Now these muscles together are the muscles which help you breathe. I cannot breathe in through, so it is not a function of my nose, it is a function of my muscles to bring in the air and to release the air. Nose is just an organ via which the breath goes in. So we have to understand that there is these muscles involved, there are lungs involved, there is this windpipe and the nose involved. These are the primary organs. Now comes a very interesting part. These transfer of oxygen and carbon dioxide has to take place in a very rhythmic manner. If our breath is not done in a rhythmic manner, then it creates a chaos in the body. Meaning the body does not know how your oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange takes place. This will affect your heart. And when this happens, unknowingly we damage our bodies. So breathing is a very, very important system of our body which not only helps us breathe in and breathe out, but it actually keeps us alive. So this is what your breathing scientifically means. Now let us go further and see two of the oldest systems, or two of the oldest medical systems in the world, which have also known about breathing. One being the Indian system, the Ayurveda. Second being the Chinese system, the traditional Chinese medicine. These are the two systems which explain us a little more detail about breath apart from what we have seen medically. Medically we know it's an apparatus of breathing in and out. Now what else is there in breath? So let us see further what happens in Ayurveda. In Ayurveda or in India, we call breath as prana. A very unique term, right? Prana means something that is a little more than just the air. Yeah, we could have called it vayu, we could have called it wind, we could have called it anything, but we named it prana. Prana means something which has got an essential life force in it. And the technique of breathing in and out is called pranayama. Prana and ayam, meaning the technique or the rhythm of breathing in and out. So any pranayama is a way that you take the breath in and you take the breath out. It is said, a very interesting fact indeed, when a child is born, what time do we think is recorded as the child being born? Not when it is separated from the mother. That is not the time. When the child is being taken from the mother and that child takes his first breath in is recorded as being born. That is the time the doctors tell you was when the baby was born. So what is important? The act of taking in breath, the act of taking in prana. That is why we think that taking in of that life force is very important. So when that happens, we call it pranayama. Now each second in our body around 80,000 cells die and 80,000 cells are born. That birth also requires prana, also requires that breath, also requires what if you may call it oxygen. So when there is oxygenation in the cell, this birth can take place, this new cells can form, any new creation can happen. Within our body, within the universe, within all existing living organism, oxygen or prana is very important. Another interesting thing, did you know that in Ayurveda, lungs are considered to be the place or the residence of kapha. Kapha is a prakriti. What is kapha made up of? It is made up of earth element and it is made up of water element. Then where did the air go? We always thought that prana or breathing is about air, isn't it? But that is not the fact. Prana or breathing is about water. we talked about alveoli, right? We were learning how the air goes into the trachea, the lungs, and then finally goes into those little air sacs called the alveoli, the end product of where the air will go before the oxygen goes into the body. Now, the blood does not come in direct contact of the air. The cells can die when they come in direct contact of the air. When you get a cut here and the blood comes out, it is contact with air. What happens? It coagulates, means it gets condensed, it gets hard. So we cannot allow our blood to come in direct contact of air. So what happens in lungs is, in those little alveoli, is that the air comes here, there is a border which is made up of fluid. That takes up the oxygen. The blood which is passing around it is transferred to it. So that transfer of oxygen, the transfer of prana happens only in presence of water. So water is very, very important to us, because when we were in our mother's womb, lungs were one of the first organs to be formed. Yet we did not breathe. We were in fluid. We were in our mother's womb. In our mother's womb also, we would come to know of the sense of breathing. It is one of our first senses to develop. In the baby in the mother's womb can understand sense, can understand smell. Whatever is happening around the mother is also happening to the child. So have you noticed that when a mother or when a lady is pregnant, is going to have a baby, she becomes more nauseated. She has very acute sense of smell. Initially when the baby is formed, you cannot bear certain smells. It's because the baby is also developing the sense of smell. A very important thing to understand, that it is one of our primary things. Our body is made in such a way that the breathing has to come to us naturally. Whether we are in the water, in the fluid, or when we come out, when we are a separate entity from the mother and we take our own breath. Both the times, breathing or our sense of smell is very important. Let's go in a little more detail and see what happens when we talk about kapha. Right? When we talk about kapha, means it is said in Ayurveda that it creates confidence. So people of the kapha prakriti are generally a little bit more confident. They are a little bit more courageous, and also that their ability to express, their ability to say what they feel is a little more than the other prakritis. Now, when this whole process is happening, lungs are an important part. So they say that lungs, they contain in grief or they contain in fear. Not an actual fear, but anxiety, I would say. So when your chest is expanded, when you breathe, you feel more confident. When you sit like this, and when you like this, because the lungs are all shrunk, kind of the posture is such. When this happens, your confidence goes low. Notice, try doing that. At times when you feel that you're not very confident, do one thing. Even if you're not feeling confident, just sit up straight, take a breath in, and say, I can do it. And you know what? You will be able to do it. This is what Ayurveda states, what your breathing or your prana can do for you. Now let us go further and see what the Chinese system tells us. In the traditional Chinese medicine, lungs are considered to be the bringers of qi. Now, qi is an interesting concept, just like prana. Qi is a life force element that is surrounding us. We need to take that qi in. We need to tap that qi in many, many ways so that we can become more aligned towards living a better life. Our consciousness can grow. So this is the bringer of qi, which means when you are taking the breath in, the qi is going into my body, it is going all into my various organs and bringing me that life force, bringing me the will to live, bringing me the joy to live. This is what is in Chinese medicine, this is what the lungs are. Another interesting fact. They too tell us that lungs are controlled by water. Right, so two ancient systems cannot be wrong in telling us that water is an important part in breathing. Strange but true. We will look into it further down in the course, how things are related in that way. But for now, let us see what happens in the Chinese medical system. They tell us that lungs along with kidneys regulate our water metabolism. They regulate throwing out of unwanted elements or unwanted energy like carbon dioxide. We saw that in the scientific terms. But apart from that, they help us regulate sweat. They help us regulate the skin, the hair. This is all done by your prana, done by your breathing. They also control your glands. They also control your power or your immunity. Now they tell us that lungs are also where you store your grief, your sadness, your depression. Have you noticed that when you're sad or when you hear something that's not very happy, what happens is you kind of let out a breath. You know, it's called a sigh. You let that out and you just don't feel it. So that exhalation, that going out, because the grief was accumulated, it went into your lungs. So now the body has to let go of it. So what it does is, and it goes out. This is a simple system that your body follows on its own. But now we know that your breath is important in giving you immunity. Your breath is important in giving you prana. Your breath is important in water metabolism, to control kapha, to control your courage, your confidence, your emotional well-being. Meaning that a lot of things, see, physical we know, right? We know that if we don't breathe, we're not going to live. So that's the physical aspect of it. If you want to become a little more healthier, you know how to breathe properly. Athletes have to know how to breathe properly, because if they don't breathe in a proper way, they will feel tired easily and they will not be able to give their optimum performance. In the same way, yogis know how to control their breath, and so that they could reach a state of their consciousness, of their spirituality in a way that they want it to go forward. But we as normal human beings, we never pay attention to our breath. Why so? Such an important aspect, and we just take it for granted. We have to know our breath and have to know how it can help us, physical level, on mental level, on emotional level, to create this balance and create this harmony of our life, so that we can perform in an optimum level. That's the end of our chapter 1. Let's go forward into the chapter 2.